Welcome to the Have More Fun podcast. In this episode, I talk with JJ and Dave Heller about how to balance work and being a mom, getting comfortable being different, and working with your spouse.
And I was like, what do you mean? What do you do with it? You love it forever. And as she was writing this letter to me, she said, and as I'm typing, I can hear your album playing in 3 different rooms in our house.
But I do have the very first quesadilla that I ever made in it.
That is
it's
not
like
true.
Framed, and I keep it.
My favorite book at the moment is a collection of liturgies called Every Moment Holy by Douglas McKelvey and published by Rabbit Room Press. I was traveling with my friends JJ and Dave Heller when on a Saturday night before a show, we sat in the green room and they handed me a package wrapped in brown craft paper and held together with TSA packing tape because airport security had inspected the package and then courteously taped it back together before returning it to JJ and Dave's checked baggage. As I unwrapped the gift, I realized that JJ and Dave are the kind of friends who once you find them, you never want to let them go. They are generous and kind, funny, they know all the best restaurants, and they make everyone around them better. They elevate every room they enter, and they also give the best gifts. The package they handed me was what has turned into my favorite book, because good friends know what you like even before you do sometimes. Every Moment Holy is a book of liturgies for the ordinary events of daily life. Events like waiting in line, sharing a meal, welcoming a new pet, or practicing the ritual of morning coffee. If the word liturgy feels disorienting, I like to think of it as a simple prayer or meditation that utilizes ancient traditions to offer something to say when you can't find the right words. If you're anything like me, I sometimes push against a tradition and formality that can be equated with liturgy. But what I'm learning is that this practice provides words that I didn't know my soul needed until I say them out loud. The night JJ and Dave gifted me with this book, before we went on stage that night, we all sat around a table and read through one of the liturgies called Before Taking the Stage. And so today, before introducing my guests, I thought I would read a short part from a liturgy called 4 Domestic Days, because chances are you are listening to this while doing something else, something that may or may not feel holy, but most certainly is. And so here it goes. Many are the things that must be daily done. Meet me therefore, O Lord, in the doing of the small repetitive tasks, in the cleaning and ordering and maintenance and stewardship of things, that by such stewardship I might bring a greater order to my own life, into the lives of any I am given to serve, so that in those ordered spaces, bright things might flourish, fellowship and companionship, creativity and conversation, learning and laughter, and enjoyment and health. As I steward the small daily tasks, may I remember these good ends, and so discover in my labors the promise of the eternal hopes that underlie them. And so I offer this small service to you, O Lord, for you make no distinction between those acts that bring a person the wide praise of their peers and those unmarked acts that are accomplished in a quiet obedience without accolade. You see instead the heart, the love, and the faithful stewardship, and all the labors, great and small. And so in your loving presence, I undertake this task. God, grant that my heart might be ordered aright, knowing that all good service faithfully rendered is first a service rendered to you. Receive then this service, that even in the midst of labors that hold no happiness in themselves, I might still have increasing joy. Amen. The very reason we are having a holy moment together right now on this podcast is thanks to JJ and Dave Heller, musicians, parents, friends, and creative geniuses. And so without further ado, here are my friends, Dave and JJ. JJ and Dave, so one thing that I have really enjoyed in spending time with both of you is watching you guys work together, because not only are you creative partners and parents, but I think the thing that I appreciate most about the two of you is that you really love and honor each other's unique qualities. And so before we get started talking about music, will you two share the story about how nonstick cookware shaped your relationship and continues to shape your relationship?
Yes. Okay, so Dave and I met in college, and first we were friends for like a year and a half before I convinced him to start dating me. and um, and once we started dating, we we like to read books together out loud. And one of those books that we read out loud, I mean, basically it was just an excuse to spend a ton of time together. But one of those books that we read was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in the Chronicles of Narnia. And so for Christmas, I thought it would be a very thoughtful gift if I went to the craft store and I bought a miniature wardrobe and kind of made it my own. And so I stained it and I made miniature coats like the kids in Narnia. And when you open
Did you sew them? Like, did you?
No, I cut out the shapes and I just glued them together.
Okay.
And I bent little paper clips into hangers.
Oh my God.
And yeah, so I mean, like lots of detail. You open the doors, and I painted a winter scene. There's a glowing lamppost, and then on the
It's a painted lamppost. It's not like electrified.
Oh
or
no,
anything,
yeah.
but it's
You weren't,
still
like, soldering.
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. And then on the back, I painted the Dawn Treader, which is a ship in another Narnia book. And then on the top, I wrote, "I've loved our adventures together, reading the Chronicles of Narnia, and I look forward to many adventures to come." And so to me, this was like the ideal gift, like the gift that you open and you celebrate and you show all of your friends because it's so sentimental and so meaningful and thoughtful. And all of my roommates were watching me make this gift, and we all could not wait for me to give it to him. And so Christmas came, and he unwrapped my gift, and I was watching his face for his expression, and he opened it and he said, "Huh, what do I do with it?" And I was like, "What do you mean? What do you do with it? You love it forever." And he just, it had served no practical purpose. And so he just didn't even know what to say.
I would like to say, to my credit, I've kept it all of these years.
That is true.
It's still, it sits on my desk. So I have actually over the years learned to treasure it.
Yes, but
not at that moment.
we had a conversation about that experience once I calmed down a little bit. And he explained to me that the gifts that he appreciates are the ones that he can use every day, practical gifts. And I was just assuming that he would like sentimental gifts because that's what I appreciate. And so I took his words to heart, and his birthday came around about 2 months later, and I thought, okay, what is something that he can use every day? So I went to the store and I bought him a frying pan because at the time he was living in a house with 12 guys and they shared everything, and he made like cheese quesadillas pretty much every day. And he was always complaining about the pots and pans that he had to use. And so I went to Target and I spent $15 on a frying pan, and I wrapped it and I gave it to him for his birthday. He opened it and he literally jumped up and down for joy in celebration of this gift. And like, I didn't even know how to respond. I like just kind of rolled my eyes and and laughed and realized that we are built so differently. But
That was such a nice pan.
Do you still have that on your desk as well?
I don't actually.
That would be amazing.
But I do have the very first quesadilla that I ever made in it.
That is
It's
not
like
true.
framed, and I keep it.
You guys have been playing music together. Is it over 15 years now?
Yeah, because we started in high school.
Well,
Oh my God.
Sorry, no, I mean
in college.
We started in college.
We were practically in high school.
I know.
Yeah, it goes all the way back. We basically
1999.
started playing before Y2K, and our music career lasted through Y2K, and after that we knew it had staying power. Music has just always had a role in our relationship. Like, I was a part of a worship team, and JJ came and started singing for the worship team. And then pretty soon a member of the worship team wanted to be in a band, and JJ had just shared a song that she had written. And he was kind of the catalyst for us to go out and start playing open mic nights. and form a little band in like that turn of the century. Is that what you call it? Or just the aughts?
I don't know.
That's what you call the 2000s.
Wow.
Like
Dave's so technical in his terminology.
I really am.
Impressive vocabulary. Wow.
So anyway, the djembe was like the really popular hand drum that everybody was using, at least in California at the time. And my roommate who convinced us to be a band had bought one of them, and the djembe is spelled djembe, and so he always called it the djembe. This is kind of like the huga.
Yeah.
And we were like, what do you call that drum? And he's like, the djembe. But it's not. It's called a djembe. So like I kept like going into musical environments and like correcting people. No, it's djembe. But like our drummer friend was like, no, I just made that up. I didn't know.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah, it's hard for someone like me who insists on being correct about stuff to get bad information and start correcting
Did you really
people.
feel a lot of shame about it afterward?
But I felt a momentary wave of shame, and then I just moved on.
You got over it. Good. One of your first songs to really make it big was featured on So You Think You Can Dance. And then since then, your music's been featured on international ads and radio stations around the world. And the coolest part, though, and you have this on your website, is that it's also kept people company in hospital rooms, in war zones, and in the middle of plane flights and sleepless nights and during weddings and on car rides. And so when you're creating music, who do you have in mind when you're writing?
It's been such an interesting musical journey because the way that the song ended up on the radio, I mean, it was on So You Think You Can Dance, which was mind-blowing in the first place. And then because of that, it ended up on Christian radio. And then we had this platform that we never thought we would ever have. And then after that, we pitched another song that ended up on the radio called What Love Really Means, and started to hear songs about our song Your Hands and about what love really means, and heard about a man who was about to jump off of the Golden Gate Bridge and just really felt like God was telling him to get back in his car for a minute. And so he thought, well, what do I have to lose? And so he got back into his car and he turned on the radio, and our song, What Love Really Means, was playing, which talks about God's unconditional love for us. And he said because he heard that song, he was reminded of how much God loves him, and he decided not to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. And it was just like, stories like that blow my mind, that God could use our song in such a powerful way like that. And so after that, we thought, well, okay, maybe this is the way that God wants to use our music. Maybe he wants our music to be on the radio. And so we kept pitching songs to try to get it onto the radio again. And we kept getting rejected over and over and over. And man, it started to get really discouraging. And I started to wonder, does our music really matter? Because for a while, the definition of success was having a song on the radio. But we ended up having a conversation with Bob Goff, and he said, you guys, I think that you might be measuring by the wrong metric. Maybe you need to redefine what success is for your music. And so we took that information to heart, and for us now, it's a question that we're constantly asking ourselves. And we've kind of come to the conclusion that our purpose through our music is to write honest songs of hope and peace. And if those songs are connecting with people, and if we're hearing stories about how God uses our songs in their lives, then that is success. And
well, I also think playing off of that, like, who needs honest songs of hope and peace? It's like people who are craving honesty and need some hope and are in a chaotic season of their life where they need to hear something peaceful. And so I think for a long time, especially at the beginning of JJ's career, we kind of had this perspective that, we'll play to all the cool kids. Like, we'll go to the college the different colleges and play to these people who were kind of the tastemakers of cool music. And pretty soon we realized that we weren't cool enough to play to the cool kids.
Nope.
And the people who were really resonating with JJ's music were sort of the misfits, or people who were going through really difficult times. And so when it comes to songwriting, I feel like a lot of the time the question is like, what is something true that we can bring into the lives of an audience who is craving a little bit more hope in their life?
That's so good. And I've seen firsthand in the events we do together, night after night, witnessing people come up to both of you after events and sharing how one of your songs has carried them through a really significant moment, or helped them recover from a really traumatic situation. And I think the reason your songs touch people so deeply is because the two of you take your songwriting so seriously and hold it with such reverence and create such uniquely beautiful music that is really so different than so much other music that's out there. And so how have you found your place in the music industry and creating songs about faith that are so honest and vulnerable and beautiful at the same time, but really you're carving out your own space in the music industry? And so what has that process looked like for you guys?
It's been difficult in some seasons, but what we've kind of come to the conclusion that there's a difference between fitting in and belonging. And for a long time, after we got our songs on the radio, we kept trying to fit in. We kept trying to kind of compete with other Christian artists who are on record labels, and we felt left out if our song wasn't picked to be on the radio, or if we weren't invited to some music industry event. But what we've kind of realized recently is there's a difference between fitting in to that mold and belonging. And belonging for us means finding the place where our music resonates. And for right now, it doesn't look like that the place for our music is on the radio, but it still feels like it's resonating with people. And we've just started this new section of my website where we're posting people's stories in how God's used my music in their lives, almost as like a reminder that even if we're not on the radio, that our music still matters.
Well, can you talk for a second about like what is the context of somebody listening to music on the radio? Like, what is the thing that somebody who's making choices about radio music that ends up on the radio, what is the thing that they're looking for, and why doesn't our music register?
Well, why don't you talk about that?
Okay. Well, so like, I feel like even since the beginning, a lot of JJ's music has been about coming to terms with pain, and like the difficulties that sometimes arise even in the midst of trying to maintain your faith in a good God, and trying to rectify how does that make sense in the context of a beautiful and yet tragic life at the same time. While we were writing those songs, we were basically told these will never work on the radio, because the people who are listening to the radio are driving around and they're really busy, and they don't necessarily have time to contemplate the really deep things of life, because they're picking up groceries and picking up kids and they're wiping runny noses, and like they just don't have the capacity to contemplate these deep things. But the thing is that I feel like those exact same listeners to the radio are also needing a moment to calm down at the end of the day, or perhaps have a quiet moment at the beginning of the day when they're not necessarily listening to the radio, but they need a little dose of encouragement, and they need to hear that somebody feels the same thing that they feel as well.
That's good. And you guys created an album called I Dream of You. It's a lullaby album. And I mean, it has gone so far and wide around the globe. And the cool part about it is that you guys have donated, I don't know how many, tens of thousands of CDs to hospital wards. And is it like neonatal intensive care units?
Adoption agencies, yeah. And yeah, NICUs, yeah.
And I think the cool part about your music is you're meeting people in pivotal moments in their lives and creating an experience and comfort around that idea of God is good in spite of the hard moments. Will you talk a little bit about the inspiration for I Dream of You? Why did you decide to create it? And I think you're working on something kind of similar too at the moment. Well, so share about that as well.
Cool. Yeah, that's right. So at the time, we were just coming off of rejection from radio. Like, we experienced the magic of having a song on the radio and thought, this is amazing. And it was kind of life-changing. And we thought, well, let's just keep doing that. But then it didn't really work out that way. They didn't really want to play any more of our songs. And at the same time, I was hearing all of these amazing stories from people about how God had used our music at a pivotal time in their lives to change something big. And so I started putting all of this pressure on myself to write a life-changing song, something with some deep theological epiphany. And so it was too much pressure, and I didn't even really want to write songs anymore. And so Dave and I talked about it, and we thought, okay, we are new parents. We have 2 very small children. What if we just take a break from writing these spiritual, theological songs and just write a collection of lullabies and love songs, something that we can sing over our children as they're falling asleep, just full of encouragement, truth, and that just felt true to us at the time. And for me, it was
we also already had a collection of about half of an album's worth of love songs that we had written for our kids just throughout the course of our career. Like, we knew someday we would have children, and so JJ already had started writing these different love songs, but our audience was also asking for it. They were saying, like, hey, when are you going to create something like this?
Oh, yeah, because they would say, hey, we listen to your music all the time in our family, and we put it on, our kids fall right to sleep. And at the time, like, that was not the intended purpose. But we tried to take that information to heart. And so we thought, okay, what if we just make this lullaby album? It'll be simple. It won't be life-changing, but I think it's what God wants us to do right now. It just felt authentic. Our goal was to write a collection of beautiful songs that would calm children and not annoy parents. Because, yeah, I mean, there are really annoying children's songs out there that just like drive you crazy. And so we wanted to create something that would be beautiful. And so it wasn't until we got into the studio and started tracking the songs, and I was sitting there like listening to them back, that I realized that not only are these songs for children, but these are words that I need to hear sung over my own soul. Like, the sun will rise no matter how long the night, and just words like, I believe in you, you're gonna be okay. And like, it just felt so much a part of my heart at that time. And we finished it and we put it out into the world, and
nobody noticed it.
Yeah, and like nothing much happened, to be honest. But like a couple like months passed, and then a year, and we just started to hear these stories, and it's just been incredible. Like, we just heard one the other day about a family who is really involved in foster care, and because the mother is a nurse, they are given children to care for who have medical needs. And so they were saying that, you know, sometimes they'll have like three or four foster children in their home alongside of their biological children. And she said that one day they discovered our album I Dream of You, and they played it for one of their foster children who was having a really hard time calming down, and they said that it was just instantaneous, that she just all of a sudden was peaceful and calm. And so they tried it, they played it for their other foster child, and it had the same effect. And they said that every single foster child that they've cared for since then, that our I Dream of You album has had this calming, peaceful effect on them. And as she was writing this letter to me, she said, and as I'm typing, I can hear your album playing in 3 different rooms in our house.
And I think like the irony is that we went into making this thing and had very low expectations for what it would be. We knew it would be boring, like that we couldn't take it out on the road and play it, because like an album full of lullabies is like beautiful but not entertaining. And so like we just went out with super low expectations, and we're looking back now, and over the past couple of years it's become the most listened to album of JJ's entire catalog. And so after hearing about all of this kind of healing and calming and this sort of medicinal quality that album has had in people's lives, we started to try to be proactive about it. And so we began donating them to foster families and to hospitals and adoption agencies, just to be able to try to get the music into as many hands as possible. And I think as a result, people have just begun to continue telling from one new mom to the next, hey, you should listen to this record. And so I feel like that album really marked a shift in JJ's career, that we just started to try to make music that was beautiful and resonate as opposed to something that would land on the radio and be hip for a moment. And, you know, on the one hand, it's really easy to say that that's what you try to do with everything. But I think sometimes there are motives that you have, like just kind of feeling, okay, this is going to be really huge. And we've learned that we're so much more happy when we're trying to make something beautiful instead of trying to make something popular.
Mm-hmm. That's really powerful. And you're working on a new lullaby album. Are we talking about that yet, or not so much?
Yes, we are. We are talking about that. We are actually in the studio right now working on I Dream of You Volume 2.
Yay!
And it's mostly going to be a cover song and 2 original songs. So we tried to pick...
I'm pretty excited about this album.
Yeah, me too!
Well, I think that the cool thing about this record is that we kind of made a version of it already in 2 different forms, because like we made the lullaby record, and then we also made a Christmas record that is essentially an album full of covers that had like a children's choir and like an 8-piece string section, and it just had this sort of really classic feel. And we thought, man, we should like take a bunch of super classic songs that like everybody loves, like Somewhere Over the Rainbow and Here Comes the Sun, and I can't think of all the other songs right now. Let me see. Like Bridge Over Troubled Waters, Moon River, just like these songs that have this super nostalgic, calming feel, and send those out into the world as well, and just try to be able to bring a little bit more beauty into the lives of our listeners. And I feel like the pressure's really off because everybody loves Bridge Over Troubled Waters.
Yeah.
And so it's really up to us to just not mess up the arrangement, as opposed to feeling a lot of pressure to say something huge and compelling.
And so be on the lookout for that in the fall. Is that right?
Yes, it'll definitely be out before Christmas. So hopefully November release date. We haven't quite landed on it yet.
So when you guys are creating together, do you ever have creative differences?
All the time. All the time.
Yes. And actually, this is an area of growth for sure, because when we first got married and we first started writing music, I was the songwriter. I would write 99% of the songs, and I would bring them to Dave, and he would come up with a cool guitar arrangement.
I think you're saying the lyricist. You were the lyricist.
Yeah, mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we started to write more and more together, but songwriting is so vulnerable, especially for me as a recovering perfectionist, because when I present a piece of art, I want it to be as close to perfect as possible. But you can't do that when you're writing a song with somebody, because it's all just a work in progress. And so I had to just throw out ideas and not have time to analyze if it was a good idea or a bad idea. And Dave is so logical and practical and to the point that he would just come out and say, no, that's a bad idea, or I don't like that at all. And I would be like crushed and angry, and I would just turn into this like melancholy diva songwriter.
JJ's like really nice, except when she's songwriting.
I know.
Like she turns into the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
It's just like, what's happening to your skin right now?
It's turning green. I think part of it is I'm accessing a totally different part of my brain.
It's the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, the Incredible Hulk part. But I mean, that's also been an area of growth for us in our marriage, where we've both had to adapt to one another. Like I have had to learn to not be so sensitive and to just take a deep breath, and also to recognize the fact that I am overly emotional when we're songwriting, and to try my best to temper that a little bit. And then Dave's also learned to be a lot more thoughtful in the way that he responds. Like if I come to him now and I have an idea for a song and I play it for him, instead of just responding right away, now he'll take a minute.
I try to say one positive thing before I move on to my criticism.
Yes. And I can tell that the wheels are turning and he's trying so hard.
I think the thing is that like there's no animosity. We're in trying to create a song, we're both trying to make the best thing that we can. But it just comes down to how do we communicate that to each other in a way to lift the material up to be the best thing that it can. And sometimes there are differing opinions. And I think as creators who have had just years of experience working side by side, you kind of get a sense for when something is a hill to die on and when you can hold an idea a little bit more loosely. And I think we also have looked at like the songs where one of us just didn't back down and we released it and it wasn't super successful. And most of the time I'd say those are the songs that I really stuck to my guns on. It's like, this is amazing. And then like nobody likes it. You see the play count for the analytics on the back end. It is like, nobody likes my favorite song. Like,
well, poor Dave. I mean, my listener, it's like 70% female. And so Dave is in this interesting position of he like helping to create a song that he loves and he believes in, but also keeping my audience in mind, like asking himself, okay, but would a young mom really like this song? And so I think he kind of has to, that is the trump card. Like he has to like it, but it's also, is it serving our audience?
Yeah. That.
Yeah. And you know what's funny about lullabies is I think I felt for a long time that in order to be serving God or like fulfilling God's will for my life, that I had to be, I don't know, like writing songs for missionaries or for the church, or it, like the songs had to say Jesus or God or, you know, like, but I feel like God I mean, God loves that, of course. But he's also interested in all the mundane details of our lives. Like, I feel like um, our relationship with him is so much more holistic than we think sometimes. And in regards to moms and like moms of babies, like God is so interested in every moment, whether we're changing a diaper or breastfeeding or trying to like make our eyes open in the middle of the night when the baby is crying and we need to feed them. I mean, like, I think that for me right now, writing lullabies or singing lullabies, even singing lullabies that I haven't written, I think that that is my ministry right now. And I think that that is how I am serving the Lord, by serving the people that he loves. And there's a Mother Teresa quote that I really love. And it's something like, if you want to bring happiness to the whole world, go home and love your family. And I think that moms are world changers. And I think that it's my privilege to serve them and to bring beauty and hope and peace and love into their lives.
I kind of want to fact check that Mother Teresa quote, because we used to quote C.S. Lewis and say this, like, if you want to make God laugh, show him your plans. And it was actually attributed to Woody Allen. So, maybe Jerry Seinfeld said that.
I hate when that happens. Like,
oh yeah, sorry, not Mother Teresa. That was Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh my gosh, can we talk a little bit about how sexy it is being a musician on the road? Because I think a lot of times when people see you in concert, they're like, man, like that is so cool. And just assuming that because of the nature of the work you do, that it is constant fulfillment and constant fun. And while you get to spend your days doing something that's really cool, I'm guessing there are difficult parts as well. What is the hardest part of your job, would you say?
Well, definitely the hardest part is leaving my kids at home. And it's interesting because they're now 6 and 9. I have two little girls, Lucy and Nora. And I thought that the older they got, the easier it would be to leave them, because they didn't have as much physical needs. Like, I don't need to physically feed them anymore or change their diapers. But I feel like their emotional needs are kind of like ramping up. And so this year we've actually decided that we're going to come off the road as much as we can and just really be picky about what events we say yes to and what events we say no to. And so far we've found a really good balance with that.
I think kind of going back to the, like, how glorious life on the road can seem to be, is like somewhat perpetuated by the different personalities in entertainment, just because they want to portray that it's amazing. Because it would be really depressing if you said, I'm really lonely out here in my hotel room all by myself or whatever. But the reality is that, like, you're spending a ton of time in transit, interacting with a bunch of strangers. And if you're an introvert, like a lot of musicians are, the road isn't necessarily a super joyous experience. Of course, it's like amazing to interact with fans, but JJ's an introvert, and it can be really draining at the end of the day, to just kind of take stock of what is left after a full day of travel, and giving yourself emotionally from the stage, and then hearing a whole bunch of people share really deep things about tragedies in their lives. And it's such a gift. But there also needs to kind of be give and take in terms of the amount of rest off of the road to sort of recover from the emotional investment and just energy investment associated with leaving home.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes we could basically spend 3 days worth of travel for sometimes like 45 minutes on the stage.
Sometimes less.
But I think the reason why we've been able to have a career for 15 years is because we get to experience all of these things together. And so if we have a terrible flight or like awful airport food or, just even if it's just a really boring, tedious day, we're together and we can experience that together, and we can keep each other humble if one of us is getting too big of a head.
That's JJ all the time.
Yeah.
Such a diva.
Or we can encourage the other if we're getting discouraged. And I think that has been such a gift from the Lord. And it's a miracle to me, honestly, that I have a career like this. I never dreamed in a million years that I would be a singer-songwriter when I grew up, and that people would actually pay money to come to my concerts and they would listen to my music. And so if I'm having a bad day, or if I feel like I'm tired of eating airport food, Dave and I can just have a conversation about that. Like about, okay, how incredible is it that our song was on the radio one time and it was on a TV show? And it's just like, it blows my mind. And just the fact that we can keep creating music is just such a gift. And so to be able to have each other, to keep each other in check is a really wonderful thing.
And you guys like to have a lot of fun, which I really appreciate and enjoy about you both. So to wrap up, I have to ask you my favorite question to ask all my friends, which is, what is the best advice you never got?
It's funny because sometimes you hear the advice, but you don't believe it until you actually like live the experience. And like we had the benefit of seeing a whole bunch of dreams come true at a point in our career where it was just like we were working so hard and thinking maybe if we hit the road and travel on a tour bus, and maybe if the crowd grows from 50 people to over 1,000 people, and maybe if we don't sell 10 CDs a night, maybe we sell a couple hundred CDs over the course of a night, and maybe we work with somebody in a real actual studio instead of somebody's home, or whatever it happens to be. And there's this kind of lie that says eventually when you achieve that thing, you will finally be happy. I think I'm going to quote Cool Runnings right now. But like John Candy's character, right? He's like talking to these Olympians about like earning a medal. And he just says, if you're not happy before you get the medal, you're not going to be happy when you get the medal. And I think that's so, it just encapsulates a lot of American culture that's saying when you have this much money or have this achievement, you will finally be fulfilled. And we're just not going to see that on this side of heaven. At the same time, like doing work that is serving other people is where you find a lot of fulfillment. And so I love that we've made the shift from trying to make something, from trying to make something popular to making something beautiful. Because if there's something that moves us, I have the assumption that it's going to move somebody else as well. And we're far less different from each other than we think we are. And so we're just trying to serve people who resonate with the same things that resonate with us.
The advice that I wish that I had gotten was, it's okay to be afraid. And I have a story about this. I struggle with fear quite a bit, and for many years I was having panic attacks and severe anxiety, and like, praise the Lord that I don't really have panic attacks anymore, but I still struggle with fear. And my oldest daughter, Lucy, also struggles with it. And so she just had a surgery on her mouth where they had to like put her under general anesthesia and like pull out 4 of her baby teeth. And so it was on the calendar for like a month, and we were both really nervous about it. I was trying to not be nervous around her. But so we go in the day of the surgery, and she was walking down the hall to the doctor's office, and she started talking to herself and saying, I can do this. I can do this. And I was like, oh no, she's about to freak out. And so we were in the waiting room, and fortunately they were running way behind schedule. And so we waited so long that she got bored. And by the time they called us back, she was fine. And she was so brave, and it went so well. And later that night, I was telling her just how proud I was of her for how brave she was, and she got this big smile on her face, and then she got really serious, and she said, yeah, but I wasn't really that brave, because right before we walked in I was pretty scared and I kind of started crying. And I said, no, Lucy, like, that's exactly why you're brave. You can only be brave when you're scared, and if you're not scared, then you can't be brave. And so she just got so excited and gave me the biggest hug, and I thought, here was a day that I had been dreading, and yet the Lord redeemed it and gave us this really beautiful moment where if Lucy hadn't had that surgery, like, she wouldn't know how strong and brave she really is. And so it turned out to be such a gift to know that it's okay to be afraid.
Oh my gosh.
I wish you had quoted Cool Runnings.
I know. And
Jamaica has the blood teeth.
Feel the rhyme. Now it's about the
wow!
Hey there, thanks so much for listening today. I want to invite you to join me in Louisville, Kentucky, September 20th through the 22nd for MomCon. It is the largest gathering of moms around the world, and it is the most fun you will have in one weekend. We are going to dance, we're going to talk about all sorts of crazy and amazing things, and we're going to have some really fun special guests that you want to meet and get your picture taken with. And I would love to see you there, so go to momcon.mops.org to register. Now go out and have an adventure, and don't come back until you do.